On July 16th, a Chinese startup most Americans have never heard of released an AI model, and within hours, it took number one on the Arena's front-end web dev leaderboard. Arena co-founder called it the single biggest release of the year, and he framed it as the moment open-source Chinese models started surpassing closed American ones. And that struck the nerves of a certain kind of person. Within days, a White House official calls it concerning, while his own administration floats a ban. OpenAI's strategy chief warns of AI communism, and the Treasury Secretary threatens sanctions for model theft, while the same government that just blocked Americans from sharing their best AI with the world just a couple weeks ago now demands the world stop using China's. The startup is Moonshot AI, based in Beijing, and the model is called Kimi K3. It is a 2.8 trillion parameter system, the first open model in the 3 trillion parameter class, nearly twice as big as DeepSeek's latest offering. And they've released the full open weights for anyone to download. On the day the model became available for free, Perplexity, an American AI research engine company, downloaded and hosted the K3 model and made it available for anyone to use on their platform. K3 did not just reach number one on the front-end leaderboard. It won 6 of 7 front-end coding categories. Its predecessor, Kimi K 2.6, sat at number 18. One release took Moonshot from the middle of the pack to first place. But before we get to the meltdown in the US government, let's be brutally honest about what K3 is and what it is not. On the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, K3 ranks only third, behind Fable 5 and GPT 5.6 Sol, just like Moonshot said in their release paper. Its hallucination rate is also high, and it is slower than both Claude and GPT. It does beat GPT 5.6 Sol on sustained coding marathons, and it costs about half of what Claude Opus 4.8 does per task. So no, Kimi K3 did not dethrone American AI across the board. But all of this landed when the market has lost confidence in the AI trade. During the week of July 17th, the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index fell 21.6% from its June 22nd high, crossing the formal threshold for a bear market. AI-related stock markets around the world crashed too. Taiwan fell about 6%. South Korea's Kospi fell 6.3%. Japan's Nikkei dropped about 4%. Chip stocks around the world had erased roughly $3.3 trillion in value since late June. Kimi K3 did not cause that crash. The market was already dealing with AI bubble fears. Debt, spending, enormous data center commitments, and the growing question of whether the money being poured into chips will ever produce returns. And K3 landed directly on that fear. The financial press called it the second DeepSeek moment. That takes us back to January 2025, when DeepSeek R1 sent NVIDIA down 17% in one day and wiped out nearly $600 billion in market value. DeepSeek R1 was the first shock. It proved that chip sanctions had not stopped China from building excellent models under severe hardware restrictions. Kimi K3 is the second shock. It proves China is not merely surviving under restrictions. It is reaching the frontier level. It can match or beat ultra-expensive American models in important real-world tasks, and it is free for anyone to download and host. That is why K3 hit such a nerve. It did not cause the AI sell-off. It reminded investors of the nightmare underneath it. What happens if the world no longer has to rent intelligence from a handful of American companies? So, are real businesses actually switching to inexpensive and efficient Chinese models? Look at OpenRouter, one of the biggest marketplaces where developers buy AI tokens. In late 2024, Chinese models carried about 1.2% of weekly token volume there. By 2026, they carry the majority, somewhere between 51 and 61%, depending on the tracker. A complete reversal in 18 months. Lindy, an AI agent startup, moved 100% of its production traffic from Anthropic to DeepSeek V4, and their CEO told CNBC the move saves them millions. Coinbase CEO confirmed he is running GLM 5.2 and Kimi models in production, and Coinbase cut its AI spend nearly in half, even while token usage spiked. Ramp, which tracks spending across more than 50,000 American businesses, found DeepSeek to be the fastest-growing vendor in its June report. Even Gary Marcus, one of America's sharpest AI critics, looked at K3 and said the quiet part out loud. China has all but caught up, and the United States is not going to win this race. Now for the hypocrisy part. This does not show up in the benchmark charts. Start with Dean Ball, OpenAI's head of strategic futures and a former Trump administration AI policy staffer. Ball conceded that Kimi K3, in his words, is impressive, and that its capabilities cannot merely be attributed to distillation. Then he warned that open-weight models are inherently decelerationist, and he mused that a world dominated by open weights could tip into, his words again, full AI communism, which he called a dystopian nightmare. It's such a hypocrisy that the head of strategy at a company named OpenAI is describing open-source AI as a dystopian nightmare. But here's the part that matters. Ball's answer was not to build a better model. It was to make customers afraid of the cheaper one. He imagined soft government advisories hinting at Chinese AI backdoors, even if the evidence was weak, creating enough fear for companies to walk away on their own. The logic is unmistakable. If you cannot beat an open competitor in the market, build a fear-based regulatory moat around it. Then there is David Sachs, the White House AI and crypto czar. He said K3 was proof America could lose the AI race. His answer was to stop tying American companies down with restrictions and let them compete. Fair enough. But days later, when Washington considered banning Chinese models, Sachs said OpenAI and Anthropic wanted the government to destroy their open-source competition. That is the contradiction in plain English. America is told to compete without limits. Chinese models are told they cannot compete at all. Then, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent threatened sanctions and entity list designations over alleged Chinese AI theft. His proof was Anthropic's claim that Alibaba used 25,000 fake accounts to distill Claude. But that case was about Alibaba, not Moonshot. Yet Washington is using one company's unproven accusation to threaten another company's model. That is not evidence at all. It is a pretext. And while Washington was screaming that China stole American AI, Anthropic was in court over 7 million pirated books it downloaded for Claude. The company paid $1.5 billion to make it go away, the biggest copyright settlement in American history. So apparently, stealing millions of books is a paperwork problem when an American closed lab does it. But when a Chinese model learns from another AI, suddenly it is an act of war. Now look at the timeline. In June, the Trump administration ordered Anthropic to block foreigners, including American allies, from using Fable 5 and Mythos 5 on national security grounds. A month later, it was considering restrictions on Chinese models inside the United States. So, in June, America's best model is too dangerous for foreigners. In July, China's best model is too dangerous for Americans. And Americans other than the closed labs disagree with the U.S. government. 25 American companies, including NVIDIA, Microsoft, Meta, IBM, Dell, and Palantir, told Washington not to cripple open weights. Their message was simple. Open models mean more competition, more innovation, and less power concentrated in a few closed labs. Jensen Huang made the deeper point. Learning from other AI is not some foreign crime. It is how intelligence works.
Distillation, learning from AI, learning from other sources of knowledge is fundamental to intelligence. And so the original AI, no matter whose it is, whether it's a closed model, it obviously scraped the internet of all of the previously learned knowledge. In another few more years, the internet would be 99% AI-generated content. And that content is generated by some AI. And so you're constantly distilling the intelligence of some other AIs anyways. And so the idea that AI can learn, that's a good thing. We want AIs to be smart.
Every model learns from human knowledge, existing software, and other models. It cannot be innovation when America does it, then theft when China does. On the other hand, can Washington really ban Chinese models? Not really. Huawei was a company with supply chains, customers, servers, and hardware Washington could pressure. Kimi K3 is a file. Once the weights are released, they can be copied, mirrored, downloaded, modified, and run anywhere in the world. A company can run it inside its own data center, fine-tune it into a new version, or use a cloud provider outside the United States. No one can recall weights already sitting on thousands of servers. Axios's own reporting spells out what that means. The government's realistic fallback is not a technical ban, because a technical ban is close to unenforceable. The fallback is procurement rules, entity list threats, public pressure campaigns, and deliberately highlighting potential backdoors to scare American enterprises away voluntarily. That is Dean Ball's playbook. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt, word for word, now showing up as actual policy. Then came the real mask-off moment. In July, OpenAI's own models broke out of a sandbox and hacked Hugging Face's servers during a benchmark run. But when Hugging Face tried to investigate, Anthropic's Fable 5 refused to help because its guardrails treated defense like attack. So the company turned to GLM 5.2, an open-weight Chinese model, ran it on its own infrastructure, and quickly shut the incident down without sending sensitive data outside its environment. That is the hypocrisy in one scene. OpenAI could deploy its model in a way that caused the crisis, but the victim was blocked from using a closed American model to respond. The guardrails in closed American models do not restrain power, they restrain customers. The data security problem with closed AI is even simpler. In July, users found xAI's Grok build was uploading entire code repositories, including secrets, to company-controlled Google Cloud storage. That is the real risk with agentic tools like Codex, Claude Cowork, and Grok build. They are not just answering questions. They are reading your code, your documents, your customer data, your product plans, and your trade secrets. The more useful they become, the more of your company they have to see. And the conflict of interest is not hypothetical. Anthropic launched Claude designs straight into Figma's territory, just days after Anthropic CPO Mike Krieger resigned from Figma's board. The important point is not whether Claude design kills Figma. It is that a closed model provider can sit inside your workflow, learn how you work, process your data, and also decide to compete with you. You do not have to assume bad intentions to see the structural problem. The company that processes your intelligence also sees your platform, your pricing, your customer feedback, blurring the line between helping you and competing with you. That is why open weights are the foundation of sovereign AI. A company, hospital, bank, or government can host the model in-house, keep its customer data and secrets inside its own walls, and set its own rules. It owns the intelligence processing its information instead of leasing permission from OpenAI, Anthropic, or anyone else. It is a choice between owning the machinery that reads your secrets and depending on a company that operates like a black box. And while Washington was game planning how to ban a file, on July 16th, the same day K3 launched, 29 countries were in Shanghai, signing the agreement, establishing the World Artificial Intelligence Cooperation Organization, a new AI body headquartered in Shanghai, with the UN Secretary General in attendance. Same day, two visions. One side signing countries in, the other side working out how to lock its own people out. So what did Kimi K3 actually destroy? Not NVIDIA's factories, and not America's engineers. It destroyed a story, the story that frontier AI is scarce, expensive, and permanently American, and that the rest of the world would rent it forever. Washington's response tells you they know it. They cannot ban a file the world has already downloaded, so they will do the next best thing, which is exactly what OpenAI's own strategist described. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt, with a justification that does not have to be particularly strong. The meltdown was never about one model. It was about the moment the moat turned out to be a mirage.